So this is week 4. So yes, we only have 3 more of these to go. Okay, so here's the good news, Biamini. The good news is most kids are making the same mistakes. Yay! That means I know what to do to kind of show you how to take it to the next level. So this is the mistake a lot of kids are making. They're repeating, this is what happened. And because this happened, for example, in the 2 towers, they were so jealous that they copied the tower. What you should have said was, what they should have done was made their own tower. Jealousy kind of clouded their judgment. Do you know what I mean? If we're supposed to show envy as a destructive emotion, we have to show what it's doing to them. So that was the first example of clouded judgment. The second example in the 2 towers was, okay, then they go dig up the foundation. That's a criminal act. You understand that, right? Don't you think that also shows an elevation in an evolution of distorted thinking? Are they rational? Is that a rational thing to do? No. And then when the Leaning Tower gets popular, they go and try to make their tower lean. And we know what happens in the story. Their tower falls over and falls on the city hall. Okay, that's messed up. That's what you were supposed to show. This is what envy does. It is so destructive. We lose sight of what matters. They destroyed a beautiful building all because of what? They were jealous. Do you see how it just makes no sense? That was the message by the author. So make sure, especially when you're answering theme, that you go one step further. So that'll be easier, I think, today with this story we're going to do, which is Conquering Fear. This is an Ethiopian folktale. I shared the document with you. Does that help when I do it that way? Yes. Okay, so this is a Google Doc I shared with you. So I'm going to go ahead and read this story. Let me just set it up for a little bit here. Miobi, this is an Ethiopian folktale. His family kind of does him a disservice. They literally name him Miobi, which means frightened one. That doesn't really set him up for success, does it? Maybe they were overprotective. Maybe they saw something when he was an infant or a toddler where, yeah, maybe he was a scaredy cat. And you know what? You should be when you're little. But maybe he had outgrown that label. And parents aren't perfect. I think you know that, right? There's no manual that says how to parent a child. So maybe that was a mistake that his family made. Okay, you ready? Once upon a time in an Ethiopian village, there lived a boy who was so shy and fearful of the world around him that his family called him Miobi, frightened one. Why do you call me that? The boy asked his grandfather. The old man laughed. Because you are afraid. The boy's grandmother, his mother, his father, and the neighbors said the same thing. Miobi pondered these words and decided he must find a way to conquer fear. So when everyone was asleep, he packed a sack, set off into the world to find out what he feared and to conquer it. That night, he slept under the wild umbrella of sky and stared up at the darkness. Before drifting off, he whispered to himself, I see you, but I will conquer you, fear. At midnight, the wolves began to howl. The sound woke Miobi, but instead of running away, he walked toward the sound, saying aloud, I will conquer you, fear. He walked until the sun began to rise, and when he saw its golden orb, he smiled with relief, for he had survived the first night. I am becoming brave, he said as he walked on. Soon he came to a village. For a moment, he thought, I don't know these people at all. They might be unkind to a stranger. But he straightened up, walked right into the village, saying aloud, I will conquer you, fear. He walked into the village square, and there he found the village elders gathered, muttering among themselves. As Miobi came near, they looked up and sneered, Who are you? I'm traveling the world to be brave. The elders laughed. Fool, no one can find bravery where it does not exist. What do you mean? Miobi asked. The elders sighed unhappily. We're finished, said one old man. Our village is threatened by a monster up on the mountain. Myobi followed the man's gaze to the top of the mountain. See him there, the old man said. Myobi squinted. He did not want to insult the man, but he saw nothing there. Look, said the other man. See? It has the head of a crocodile, a monstrous crocodile. And his body is as horrible as a hippopotamus, a gigantic hippopotamus. It's like a dragon, another man cried, with fire shooting from its snout. Now Myobi began to see the monster. He began to see the smoke and fire, the wrinkled skin, the fiery eyes. I see, he said. But silently he promised himself he would not be afraid. So he walked away from the elders into the village proper. Everywhere, people cowered. The little children hid inside, refusing to go to school. If the children go outside, the women said, the monster will come down from the mountain and eat them. Everyone knows monsters eat children. The farmers hovered inside their doorways, hoes and rakes in hand. Outside, their horses stood unharnessed. We cannot work, they told Myobi. If we go into the fields, the monster will come down and get us. Myobi saw wandering goats, sheep, and cows at the edge of the village. No one came to milk them or tend to them. No one planted their crops. Few left their homes, preferring to hide indoors. This monster's as big as 10 barges, they whispered among themselves as Myobi listened. The monster's going to destroy us. Finally, Myobi decided it was up to him to destroy the monster. I wish to conquer fear, he announced, and so I shall go slay the monster. No, son, don't do it, the elders cried. You will die. Myobi shivered and his heart fluttered, but he was determined. I must conquer fear, he said, and he set off. At the base of the mountain, he looked up and felt a chill. The monster looked bigger and more fiery than any dragon, fiercer than a pack of wolves or nest of snakes. He remembered the days when he had been afraid. He took a deep breath and began to climb, and as he climbed, he looked up. But now he saw the monster seemed to be smaller. How peculiar, he said aloud. My eyes are deceiving me. He continued to climb. When he was halfway up, he looked again. He squinted, shielding his eyes, but the monster's eyes no longer seemed so fierce, and the flames no longer shot out from its snout. The closer I get, the smaller he looks, Myobi said, puzzled. He continued to climb, though now he pulled his dagger from his sack, so he would be prepared. As he came around a bend in the path, he saw the summit before him. He gasped. The monster had disappeared. Myobi looked behind him. Surely the creature would sneak up from behind to attack, but when he turned, he saw nothing. He heard nothing. He held his breath. He looked left, he looked right, he continued to climb. At last, he reached the summit, and all was empty and quiet. Nothing was there. Suddenly, he heard a sound at his feet. He looked down and saw a little creature, a toad with wrinkled skin and round, frightened eyes. He bent down. Who are you? He asked. How did you become so small? The monster said nothing, so he cradled it in his hand and walked down the mountain. When he reached the village, the people cried, He's safe! And they surrounded him. Myobi held out his hand and showed them the tiny wrinkled toad. This is the monster, he said. What is your name? Asked the elder. The creature croaked, and the elder looked up at the crowd and said, Myobi has brought the monster. Its name is fear. Lots of things in this story. Woo! First of all, how old do you think Myobi was to go off on his own like that?
Probably like.
Hey, turn your volume on.
Probably like 15.
You're still, hold on. Try now.
Probably like 15.
Yeah. At what point do you feel, and obviously this is kind of a nomadic life. This is Ethiopia, so kind of a nomadic life. So he probably had learned skills enough to know. So a couple things in the story, and you'll notice that I highlight them on mine. So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to highlight them for you. You're going to see we have, I will conquer you fear once, twice. This is on the first page. 3 times on the first page. So why do you repeat something? Why does an author repeat something?
To like make it like to like know that the main character is
It's for,
wanting to do
it's
that.
just for emphasis, right? If you repeat, lyrics of the song, shake it off, shake it off, shake it off, that's the main message, right? The whole main message of this is I will conquer fear. So if you go through this, you will see several times, and you'll notice I'm highlighting, I will conquer fear. This kind of became a mantra. Do you know what a mantra is? It's kind of words, positive words that help you get in the right thinking, the power of positive thinking. This self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will. Okay, so we're going to go to past the story element. So we have Niobe as our main protagonist. His name meant frightened one. Now you see what I mean? How brave was he?
Very brave.
Okay, let's go through some of the things he does in the story. So first, I'm going to go to how did Niobe overcome his fear? Do you see where I'm at? It's a big, long page. I believe it's page 4 in the Google Doc. Okay. So first of all, Niobe acknowledged he was afraid and he faced his fears. Sometimes it's okay, during the pandemic, I'm still afraid of COVID. I had it and I had it really bad. And it's not going away. It's here to stay. But look at how many people aren't wearing masks anymore, right? They're like, okay, I can't let this virus stop me from living, right? If I get it, I get it. I've been vaccinated. I've done everything I can. So once he understood what he was afraid of, I think that's when he took control, don't you? So when he tried to sleep under the stars and heard the wolf howl, he was afraid. He walked toward the sound. Fiomini, would you do that? Same. I'm like, no. When the elders described the monster, could he have left that village? Right? They were rude. They were worried. They were scared. Instead, he stayed. Right? Niobe listened to the villagers. He saw how trapped they were by their fear, and he decided it was up to him to defeat the monster. They were paralyzed with fear. So I want to kind of show you there are two kinds of fear in this story. Niobe has a normal fear. And fear is defined as, and this is on your sheet too, a distressing emotion. It's just on my board. Aroused by impending danger, pain, or attack. And whether the threat is real or imagined, it's normal. We have a fight or flight or freeze reaction. And the villagers were kind of in this freeze response. They couldn't move. You know what I mean? They were just frozen in fear. But what Niobe's fear was normal. The fear that the villagers displayed was a phobia. So what is a phobia? It is an abnormal response to fear. It's intense, it's persistence, it's irrational of a specific object, in this case, the monster, activity, they wouldn't do their normal life, situation, and it manifests in physical symptoms. It could be sweating, trembling, rapid heartbeat, shortness of breath, and it motivates avoidance behavior. And that's exactly what happened to this village. They avoided it. So when you have this kind of fear, this is when you need help. This is when you need to talk to a counselor. This is when you need medical professional help. So second, Niobe kept thinking positive thoughts. And I told you, I went through this story, and I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 times this mantra, I will conquer you fear. Do you think if you say something enough that you start believing it? I always think of that book. I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. The little engine that gets up the hill. Okay. The elders fed their fears. I don't know if you know how big a barge is. Do you know what a barge is? Okay, let me show you a picture of a barge. Because I want to show you how extreme. Let me share my screen. Okay, I'm sorry, I have a new laptop, so I'm just going to show you my screen this way. Okay, let me give you a big picture. Okay, so this is a barge. Okay, they're saying it was 10 of those. It's as big as 10 barges. That's a little excessive, yes? Yeah. Okay, I got a new laptop on Monday, Viomini, and I always think I've set everything up, and this is the one thing I haven't set up yet to share the screen. That's why I kind of moved my computer. So I apologize for that. Okay, let me go back to the elders gave into fear. Their words were, "We're finished." Myobi listens to their fears, and initially he starts seeing the monster, and he starts kind of internalizing their fear, but he doesn't let his thoughts overwhelm him like they did. You remember they were talking about he's as big as a hippopotamus. I mean, they were so extreme. So what's really interesting is I think Myobi, being an outsider, can see things with different eyes. Okay, what he sees is parents refuse to allow their children to go to school. The farmers are not plowing their fields. The animals are left unattended. But what he notices is if the monster really was a monster, wouldn't he have eaten the animals that were unattended? So Myobi kind of starts going, something's off here, right? Something's off here. He notices all of this and recognizes they're not thinking rationally. And this is when he says, I'm gonna slay the monster for you, right? Finally, Myobi chose to look fear in the face, to take a closer look at what the villagers were afraid of. So I don't know about you, but I'm not going up a mountain facing a monster for people I don't know, right? So as he climbs up the mountain, you'll notice, he becomes less afraid. Again, facing his fear to go in the first place. I love the part where he grabs his dagger, like, okay, I'm ready in case there is a threat, right? Reaches the top, and there's a tiny wrinkled toad. And he's like, this is the monster. Was there ever a monster, Viomini? Was that toad the monster? No, it was symbolic. No, it just happened to be there. It was not the monster. There's no way he could have seen that from the bottom. So when Myobi faced the monster, he showed the villagers the truth. Do you think the villagers got it in the end? Do you think they did? Well, let's go back to the end of the story. And what it says here is, what is your name? It talks to the toad. The elder looked up at the crowd and said, Myobi has brought us the monster. Its name is fear. Maybe. I like to think they understood. I hope so. Okay, so here is the prompt. You ready? In the folktale Conquering, I notice I say a lot. So I'm working on that. In the folktale Conquering Fear, a young Ethiopian boy is depicted as shy and fearful of the world around him. But he takes matters into his own hands, deciding he must conquer fear. So here's your job. Here's what it asks you to do. Explain how the main character, Myobi, chose specific actions which allowed him to conquer his fear once and for all. So first of all, at the beginning of the story, one specific action was he left. He packed up his bags and he left on his own on a quest. How brave is that? No food, I'm hoping he packed food and water, but honestly, that in and of itself is huge. Then when he's sleeping under the stars, I'm guessing no tent, right? He hears a wolf and he walks towards it. Okay, so there's two right there at the beginning of the story. And then in the middle of the story, when he encounters the villagers, they're rude. And then they tell him about this monster. You don't want to be here, son. He could have left. I mean, that showed his, how brave he was right there, how he faced his fear. Okay, then he goes into the village to kind of see what's going on, have an idea. Okay, what's everybody doing? And he looks through different eyes. He looks through a different lens because he's an outsider. He can be objective. Do you think that that happens to us sometimes with our fear? We can get so consumed by it that we don't see things clearly. Do you think that happens sometimes? I love that part of the story because I think that's very, very true. This is why a lot of people who have phobias have to go to a counselor. The counselor will kind of, say, it's not really normal what you're doing, right? I'll tell you a true story. My nephew, once removed, my nephew, when COVID hit, he was in kindergarten and he developed this germ phobia, and I believe it's mesophobia. He could not stop washing his hands. So they had to work with a therapist and tell him, yes, this virus, this pandemic is out of our control. And yes, washing your hands is good, but not to this level, not to this degree. And he overcame it. It was just kind of one of those things. He got over it, but it did take a professional to kind of help guide him through it. Okay, then by the end of the story, he is climbing the mountain for them to face this unknown monster. And at this point, does he believe there's a monster? Yeah, he does. He's ready. He's got his dagger. And as he walks closer, it becomes smaller, right? Fascinating. He doesn't stop. How many of us would turn around, right? From the moment Miyobi decides he's tired of being afraid, every encounter he faces allows him to see only he has the power to control his fears. Okay, so you can choose any 3 examples. And in this one, what I want you to do is I want you to paraphrase, summarize the events, no quotes. Okay? You're going to reference the text, but you're going to summarize the text instead of quoting it. Let's try this time. That might help you and a lot of the younger students, okay, which is what they're going to expect. Okay, so how do you add a lead and a conclusion? Well, explain the difference between a fear and a phobia. In the story Conquering Fear, the main character Miyobi recognizes he's fearful. His parents, his entire family call him Frightened One. Maybe his family has fed his fears or overprotected him, but instead of hiding, Miyobi shows incredible courage when he leaves all he knows to go on a quest to the unknown in order to, and I love this, conquer his fear. That's something you could quote because it's a short quote. The willful act of fighting through fear is what will allow Miyobi to change his response to dangerous situations. Conclusion idea. Throughout his journey, it's clear to the reader how Miyobi looks at the world with new eyes. He sees the villagers' irrational fears, recognizes how they are overreacting. This is what allows him to finally be brave enough to offer to seek out and face the monster on behalf of the villagers. Even when Miyobi shows them their monster was only a toad, they're still fearful. However, Miyobi has finally conquered his fear once and for all. He's no longer afraid. I don't know that I would, when I wrote that, he's no longer afraid. Yeah, I think, we're always going to be afraid, but he's not going to let fear, disable him, keep him hiding anymore. He's going to face his fears. Okay, so go to the last page, scroll down. So I've kind of showed you how to do it. So I'm going to show you with quotes. You're going to do it without quotes. Got it? Okay. Write your own claim and answer the prompt above. How did the main character Miyobi choose specific actions, which allowed him to conquer his fear once and for all? Okay, so this is not an opinion. It's not asking you. So this will be a third person response, expository response. Okay, so write your own claim. It should, you should use probably a lot of words in that prompt to answer it because you're literally answering like in a complete sentence. Okay, reason one to support the claim. And obviously you want to do it in chronological order. I say that logically, Viomini, but I had kids doing the end of the story first and then weird things. And I was like, okay, whoa. Always present events in chronological order. It's not logical to present the end of the story first. And it's confusing and it's really hard to follow. Okay, so first off, at the beginning of the story, what happens? Well, so mine is, when he goes on this quest, he falls asleep at midnight and the wolves start to howl. The sound woke him up, but instead of running away, he walked toward the sound saying, I will conquer you, fear. And you'll notice it's not a big quote here because I will conquer you, fear is a pretty important quote, don't you think? That's probably the one quote you should do in this. Why did the author create that specific scene? Because most people would not go towards a wild animal, especially a wolf, when they hear him howl. Am I right? Okay. Second of all, he comes to a village. For a moment, he thought, I don't know these people. They might be unkind to a stranger. Okay, and we know what the encounter was. They're gruff. They're saying, we got a monster. You don't want to be here, son. Really basically saying, leave. This is your get out. He doesn't leave. Okay, what's the point of this scene? I think the point of this scene was to show Miyobi what it looks like. You're looking at people who have developed a phobia. You're looking at people who are not rational. This is not normal. And maybe he's like, I'm not so bad compared to these people, right? So I think he was more objective, maybe because he was, an outsider. And then the third one, when he went up to the mountain. Okay, so you can choose any 3 scenes. You don't have to choose my scenes. Number 3, they explain why the author created that scene. This is where kids are really struggling. Okay, why would he put that in there? And if I give you the answer in class, I kind of expect it in the essay. So don't repeat the same thing after you talk about the text reference. Take it to a higher level. Does that make sense? Okay. And I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. See if there's anything else I have here. Huh. I don't know what this is. I think my employee wrote that. Oh, that's the other one. Okay. All right, you're good to go. I was like, what is that? I just deleted that. Just disregard that. 428. Okay, good time. All right, you're good to go, sweetie. Thanks for coming. Have a good one.
Bye, Enzo.